Okay, Bobcat, what the crap are we doing this time?
Well, this week we're trying something new. It'll be a podcast cooking show. Because a good friend of mine,
That's a
Ghidorah,
stupid idea!
it's a Hungarian dish. You take 1 part spice and 1 part wolf.
Oh, God. So, we're doing Spice and Wolf, everyone.
Yes. Hello, everyone out there in Internet Radio Land. This
Why
is Bob.
did you even do that? Why?
Because we didn't actually introduce ourselves or the show.
I'm not going to introduce myself at all this show.
Burke, introduce yourself.
No! This is the 5 Point Podcast. And he came up with a terrible idea.
Oh.
Go eat your cat.
No, my cat's cute. She's on my lap right now.
All the more reason to eat her. Okay.
Burke actually has a cat who he loves and hates at the same time, so he's not actually abusive to animals, just to me.
You're an animal. Anyways, Bobcat's lies about my non-abusive nature aside. Right. Today's episode, series is Spice and Wolf. An anime that, we'll get to it.
Right. This was recommended by friend of the show, Ghidorah, who has the amazing power to have a name that sounds like he's a Japanese monster.
Specifically, a 3-headed dragon that spits lightning.
See, I think of it more sounding like Gamera. Maybe he's a 3-headed turtle who spits lightning.
Ghidorah. Ghidorah. That is Godzilla's arch-nemesis.
I thought it was pronounced Ghidra.
It depends on the dubbing.
Ah, good old dubbing. We'll be talking about that today, too.
Yes.
So, Spice and Wolf.
Wait. First, we have to have the traditional Bobcat screwing up. Give me the 5 points of the podcast, now.
Okay, 5 points are first impressions, story, characters, presentation, and final thoughts.
You clearly have a cheat sheet. I'm going to have to set you on fire at the end of the review.
Oh. So anyways, as always, let's get started at point number 1, first impressions. Burke, what were your first thoughts about this show?
You know, I'm starting to think that this is really poorly worded, and that'd be an error on your fault, so no consequence to me. But I didn't know anything about this show. I knew someone who liked it, but I didn't know why they would like it, because I didn't know anything about the show. I hadn't seen any pictures of it, I hadn't seen any promotion of it, didn't read anything about it. The only thing I ever saw was the cover of the show on Netflix, which showed a young woman, maybe like teenage, with fox ears maybe? I guess wolf ears, but wolves usually aren't ginger.
Well, given how Japan likes to do English, it could very easily have been about a fox spirit, but they called it wolf.
Pretty much. Especially given kitsune are a thing.
My first impression was that I know this show has an excellent reputation. Every reviewer on Desu Des Brigade and other places I've seen has lots of praise for the show.
I don't actually watch any of those, so yeah.
Well, that explains how you managed to go without having a really well-informed first impression.
Yes, I am going blind.
There, Burke. I'm sure it'll all come together.
No, I'm literally going blind right now. Luckily, I don't need to see to be able to give my opinion on things.
Alright, so point 1, I had high hopes going into it. Burke knew absolutely nothing about it.
I had no opinions other than my raw hatred that had been cultivated by the last weeks.
Yes, I can say this much. We didn't have the same reaction we had last week.
I think that would be impossible to do without us going to jail.
Yeah, someone would be lit on fire. And it wouldn't be me for once.
For once. Just wait till the end of the review.
So, point dos. Story.
Can I touch this one?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. There are things. People are at the things. There's money. There's a spirit. Wheat. Stupid potato. And done.
Okay, so let's translate that into, complete sentences. Use your words, Burke.
I did.
Use your words coherently, Burke.
No.
Okay, so Spice and Wolf, I had gotten the impression from stuff I had seen that it was set in the real world. Apparently, I was living a lie.
A very, very terrible lie.
But you could be forgiven for thinking that up until a couple of minor details.
Such as names of places, currency used, general setting.
Right, it looks like medieval Europe. And I would say that, as somebody who is big on history, it looks like somebody who did cursory research to get the look down, but didn't really pick a particular place.
Maybe somewhere in, like, the northern lands.
Yeah.
Or at least one of these central characters is from the northern lands. Bobcat is actually failing to touch on the actual story involved.
It's the setting, Burke. I'm setting up the setting.
You are not the show. You do not have to set up the setting.
You're right. I don't have to be as slow as the show. I'm sorry. Get away, cat. I don't have time to have you sitting on me right now.
Eat her!
The story starts off in a European village. A trader by the name of Kraft Lawrence. I'm going to just refer to him as Lawrence from here on out because the Englishy name Kraft is spelled with the same K as the macaroni and cheese, and that makes me sad inside.
I'm just going to call him Larry.
Wow, Burke, for once you gave someone an insulting diminutive nickname that isn't actually all that insulting or diminutive.
Well, it's either that or 50-year-old 20-something.
Okay, Larry is much easier on the tongue.
Yeah. We'll touch on that later.
So Larry is on his... Now you have me doing it. Larry is taking... Larry is a...
I am the
Larry is a trader. He is, at the moment when we meet him in the story, he has a wagon load of, I believe it was ermine furs and...
Fox.
What?
Fox furs.
They said it was a different thing in the sub than the dub, which was bizarre. But some sort of animal furs and a single sheaf of wheat. He goes into a small town which is one of the few towns in the area to still practice the old pagan ways. Now this is another place where I thought that the show was going to be intriguing, because I thought it was going to be the replacement of paganism with Christianity in Europe. And they sort of have that going, but since it isn't actually the real world...
And it's not really Christianity either.
Yeah, it's just a very, very, very similar facsimile.
Not really. All they ever refer to is the one God. And really, there have been plenty of religions with one God. If it was an obvious stab or whatever you have at Christianity, it would have to include Jesus in some form. Either just token mentioning, Son of God, or some other fashion. Maybe Holy Mary?
That's true, but I would say that the priests and such and the churches and such are so obviously based on medieval Catholic churches that it's more similar to that than to, say, Islam or Judaism or other monotheist religions.
Maybe.
So anyways, he winds up in a village where they practice the old pagan ways. The tradition in this particular town is that there's a wolf spirit named Holo, or Horo.
Holo.
In the sub they were saying Horo, but I guess that could just
Holo.
Marco.
You're really asking for the fire tonight.
Yeah, you're already going to burn me anyway. I might as well earn it.
Yes, but before I was just going to do it like burn notice. I was just going to make you illegal to live here anymore. Now it's actually going to involve fire.
So, it involves a wolf spirit named Holo who is supposed to help the town keep the crops bountiful. But she's been made obsolete by new farming methods that have predictably good harvests.
Yes. One reason why they were eager to get... Oh, I guess we could cover that in character.
You're right.
Give us something to talk about anyways.
This is going to be a short one, folks.
Maybe. Just watch it become the longest one ever as we bicker and argue through the night.
No, I would have to be much more interested in the proceedings to be willing to bicker and argue all night.
I couldn't make you.
So, the tradition is, and Larry comes in just as they're about to finish the festival, that the townspeople are going through the field, harvesting the stalks of wheat, and the wolf is supposed to be contained in the last sheaf. Like they're hunting the wolf, sort of. However, Larry is watching the end of the festival, and a girl, whose name is Chloe, cuts the sheaf, and then there's a loud thump from the back of his wagon. This was actually a pretty good moment, I thought, because I knew what was happening just because of reviews I had seen, but I thought it was a nice little, it was like a subtle moment. You knew something was up, but you didn't necessarily know what.
Go on.
So Larry has some awkward moments with Chloe. Awkward because they're both merchants.
Maybe we should cover this in character, too.
I'll say that this is relevant enough to the story that I'll touch on it briefly now.
Okay.
But they're both merchants. Chloe is a few years younger than Larry, and apparently Larry was her teacher, and she has romantic interest, but he seems to either be oblivious or politely ignoring it.
Cover that in a minute.
Right. And when he goes to check on his goods, there's a naked woman laying in his pelts.
Not just a naked woman, though. A naked woman with ears and a tail. And this is before anime was a thing, so he knew something was wrong.
He initially thought that she was a demon-possessed woman, but she says, "Oh no, I'm Holo, the god."
Well, actually she does not identify as a god. Instead, she claims that she's nothing quite as magnificent. She's merely a wolf spirit.
But she is the Holo.
Yes. She helped with the harvest.
Yes. And he understandably thought she was crazy, so he says, "Prove it." She says, "Okay, well, I can assume my true form if you let me eat some of that wheat." He says, "Fine."
She does, and scares him crapless.
And this was another well-done bit where she eats it, camera pans away, and you just see his terrified reaction.
Yeah, then she leaves, and he goes and gets an apartment that Chloe breaks into somehow. How did she know where he was?
That is an excellent question. Let's see here. No, he wouldn't have rented it before he left, and no dialogue was exchanged between them anyway.
And she was kind of supposed to be held prisoner.
We kind of forgot that. Part of the pagan ritual that was involved there was that the person who caught the wolf would go into the local shrine and stay in there for a week.
And Chloe was it.
Why did you sing that?
Because screw you.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, actually, no, it isn't fair enough, but I've long since learned to deal with it. So that's when we have the awkward non-romance scene.
Which I will go into a little bit more later.
And then Larry comes across Holo again, apologizes for being scared, and for reasons that I wasn't quite clear on, I guess Holo decided that if they didn't need her in the town anymore, she would just, go along with him, since he was nice enough to give her an escape hatch, because she could teleport into the wheat.
I'll explain a little bit better once we get along, into character, but before then, she becomes his traveling partner since Bobcat did not take up on that cue. And they go around on adventures, counting money and cursing potatoes.
That was a terrible cue.
You are a terrible person. You get the cue you are deserved.
So the story that we've brought up to this point is just in the first episode. I would be reluctant to say that the next two episodes really have a story.
That is because you are silly and have a terrible attention span.
Okay, they have a story, but it's a very slow story, and it's more about world building and character building than events happening.
We might as well bring this up here because it is more so a part of the story than it is anything else. But this is not a fast-paced show. This is a slow-paced show. It builds its characters, it builds its world, it builds its currency for some reason.
Because it's about merchants, what I'm saying is, in a fighting anime, you build up the martial arts styles or the sword fighting styles. In a magical girl anime, you build up the magic styles. So in a merchant-based anime,
Which is apparently a thing now.
It's definitely unique. In a merchant-based anime, you build up the specific currencies.
Yeah. Well, really, most of it is just, filler or fodder or whatever. It's just sort of chaff. But
Wheat Wolf chaff. Good one, Burke.
Oh, that tears it. You're going to die. Anyways, okay, before Bobcat's impending murder, the story is very slow-paced, as I said before. It takes its time, it builds up things, It doesn't move at any kind of breakneck pace. It has a kind of quickness to it, but it's more like where normally a quick pace means rushing from scene to scene, character to character. This is more like a sleight of hand. Characters are placed and rearranged. Plot points are altered and changed, which is another form of altered, which makes this sentence entirely redundant. Ultimately, it's really uniquely done. The only problem is that a large chunk of it is about merchanting, which, at least up to this point, is a little jarring, but I'm starting to get used to it. And the other bits, which we'll cover in character and presentation, kind of counterbalance it for me.
For me, the thing about this is that the story up through episode 3 is told as a long conversation between Lawrence and Holo.
Larry.
Oh, let me call him what I like.
You were calling him Larry for most of the time.
I was trying to be more professional and official. That's my role in this. You're supposed to give people dumb nicknames.
You went along with it without any coaxing from me.
Anywho. And I've been saying anywho a lot tonight.
Yes.
It's very talky. That's what most of the story is the two characters talking with each other, learning things about each other, bouncing off each other, building the world that way.
There's more words per minute in this show than there are punches in Dragon Ball Z. Or, for that matter, words in Dragon Ball Z.
Okay, so far, just to compare to other shows, Tales from Earthsea was very slow. This was more entertaining than Tales of Earthsea because things are being explained and the dialogue is much more interesting.
And Holo is a far more interesting character than anything in Earthsea.
Yes. Alright, so let's move on to point 3, characters.
Which would have been a good segue if we actually made it a segue. Good job, Bobcat.
Point 3, characters.
Larry! Larry looks like he's 50. He is, really, really silver hair. Really silver hair.
And he has a sort of wispy beard.
Yes. Though, as we will discuss in presentation, there's not a whole lot of variance in looks, for the most part. But the thing about Larry, he is, for the record, as I sort of alluded to earlier, actually 20-something. Just has an unusual hair color. The thing about Larry is, largely, he's kind of just indecisive. He likes to take things smooth and easy. He likes things to be a sure bet. He likes to play things close to the vest.
He's a very conservative investor who doesn't like to put all of his eggs in one basket.
Or any of his eggs in a basket at all.
In the third episode, he laments that he lost out on a great chance to make money off of Apple futures, which is interesting to me because, to the best of my knowledge, in the medieval age, futures weren't a thing.
Yes, but then again, neither were merchants like what we're seeing. This is a very modern take on merchants.
I would say this is sort of Renaissance era, maybe. Might have, the Renaissance Italy might have been this sophisticated.
Maybe.
But yeah, maybe.
This is definitely a hodgepodge of different worlds and different timelines and different styles and cultures, but I think it works. At least as a background.
But this is more presentation. I was just bringing it up because it's relevant to Larry that he's a very sophisticated merchant. He's obviously a smart guy.
He is smart, and I was just commenting on it purely because you brought it up. But the thing about Larry is he's also... I have to question just how... Okay, look. A wolf spirit shows up to you, offers to join you, follow you around, and after an initial rocky start, you go, okay, cool, whatever, wolf spirits are a thing now. Something's a little off with you.
He takes things way too easy.
I think off-screen, every single time, he's smoking a little something-something. He is very, very chill.
The only time he isn't chill is when Holo talks about wolves eating humans and becoming stronger.
And that's because, as we see in a fancy flashback, it's very likely that a group of people he was with anyways, left someone to die so they could get away from a wolf attack.
Yeah.
Didn't sit too well with him. Oh, also, Holo may or may not have eaten people.
I wonder if Larry has the early gray hair because he's lived a hard life.
Maybe, maybe not. He already had the gray hair and all the other flashbacks, though.
That's true.
One thing I will note, if his name had been Larry to begin with, or at least Lawrence, his first name was Lawrence, and if his last name was Talbot, I would love the show forever, but it's not, so I don't.
That's the sound of the reference going right over my head.
You are an uncultured swine. Okay, then. Anything else about Harry, or Larry, or Barry? Jill Sandwich!
I have to say that Larry is a likable guy, but in a very sort of neutral way. Like, you can sympathize with him at times, because Holo does like to push his buttons a bit. But he's very analytical. He plays it close to his chest.
Yes. Also, you can easily get frustrated with him because he doesn't take any kind of chances unless he has to.
Fortunately, he's bounced out by Holo.
Hello, Holo. Hello, Holo. Hello, 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 Holo. Holo.
Okay, nice song. I would have also accepted Holo, hello. I don't know why you say goodbye. I say hello.
Moving on. Holo is the wolf spirit of the show, title character, I suppose. Spice and where is the spice, anyways? Is Larry the spice?
Well, as a history major, what I can tell you is that in old times, like Renaissance, medieval, early modern period, spice didn't just refer to what we call spices today. Spice was a generic term for any sort of good that you could transport over a long distance without it going rotten.
So Larry is the spice.
Well, I'd say that the animal furs he was transporting somewhere were a form of spice under that broad definition.
If you say so. Anyways, the thing about Holo, she can only exist in physical form as long as her wheat stays, fresh. It isn't destroyed or anything.
This means that she probably has a very short lifespan, because eventually, even if you take the best care of wheat in the world and she has it in a small sack around her neck...
Oh, this just confirmed something.
Yes?
What version of this did you watch?
I watched the first 2 episodes in the dub, then switched to the sub for the 3rd one.
Then I'm very confused on how you missed this, because she explained it very clearly. In fact, it's in the scene that you want to bring up later on, the line from it. Her wheat is special wheat. It will never age, it will never wither. She can exist with it, but only with it. It can only be destroyed if it's set on fire, ground to dust, or eaten, which means she kind of jeopardized her own life a little bit when she showed her true form, which I guess goes to show her trust in Larry.
See, I got the part about it only being destroyable that way, so I guess I just forgot the whole no rotting thing.
Yeah. Well, okay. That's also part of the reason why she's going with Larry, because he has her wheat, or at least he did. And thankfully, she is a good judge of character.
Now, I'd say she's an excellent judge of character. In fact, I would say that's the best thing about her, is that she is good at reading people.
Yes.
In one episode, she gets involved in a deal for the furs that Lawrence was transporting, and she gets the price up a good 50%, because she is very good at haggling.
Which is really, really amazing. And a lot of her haggling was outright lies.
Yes, she bought a whole bunch of apples and had them just sitting on top of the furs while she was eating them. And then afterwards, the furs smelled sweet like fruits, and she used that as a selling point. Yes, these ermine, and they said ermine in the sub. So
it was foxes, they just simplified it.
Well, ermines are like weasels, but these furs are from ermines who were eating lots and lots of fruit. So much fruit that the scent has permeated their skin and fur. Smell. Doesn't it smell so sweet and wonderful? Isn't that worth 3 silver a fur instead of 2?
Kinda swindled them. Kinda swindled.
And I have to say, she is an excellent rendition of various pagan deities of Europe.
Yeah.
In that way. She's very selfish.
Okay.
She has no real impulse control.
Nope.
And she
Hates
has no problems
Hates
being amoral.
potatoes.
Nah, she didn't hate potatoes. She hates her human neck. I'll get to that in a second.
She hates potatoes.
But
stupid potato.
die, potato. No.
What? No. Dumb potato. That was the line. If you're going to say the line, say the line.
It was a reference to ASDF movie.
No, I don't even know what that is.
You're probably better off not knowing. It's kind of silly.
Mm.
Yeah, she is very much a pagan-style deity. One thing that's interesting is that while she was giving the town the bountiful wheat crop, some years she wouldn't, just because she wanted the land to recover. So she does have some sense of responsibility.
She's intelligent. As she herself would constantly say, I am Holo, the wise wolf.
Yeah, it got kind of grating after a while.
Yes.
It's not that it's wrong. Well, at times she is very wise. She understands how to read people and use people, and she's also very knowledgeable.
I really like Holo. I like her attitude. I like her character. I like the way that she interacts with Lawrence for the most part. Really, if I had to bring any fault with her, it would be that she chooses a very odd form. And if this was in a more modern setting, it would raise a lot of questions. Specifically about poor Larry. She has taken the form of a 15-year-old girl.
In the subs, they said that her form is always in its mid-teens.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Curse you, Japan, and your pedophilia.
And, well, Larry looks pretty old. His cover for her, around people who aren't his friend, apparently, anyways, his sexist friend at that, his cover for her is that she is his wife, which doesn't even make anyone bat an eyebrow. And in the old days, where this is set, that's not really out of the question. That's about right. 15-year-olds or younger would be sold off to successful merchants. Or not sold off, married off. But
sold off in some places.
Yes, but in a more modern setting, Chris Henson would probably want a few words with him.
Now, to be fair, in a modern setting, he would say, oh yeah, I'm her father, and people would believe him.
Yeah, but you and I both know there's a romance brewing there, and quite frankly,
definitely.
That would just get creepy. Speaking of romances!
But I'll say, before we segue, one, if there isn't a romance budding here, then kudos, anime. You caught me completely off guard. You're just going for a pure friendship/partnership, which would be kind of unique for this type of show.
What is number 2?
2, if I had to find a fault with her, aside from occasionally finding her kind of annoying because of how much she would crow about being the wise old wolf.
And then she chokes on a potato.
Well, that's actually what I was going to talk about, is the fact that she's kind of a food monster. And this is something that you see in every single anime, where if a character is non-human, they are a food monster. She buys what looked like to be an entire bushel of apples and eats them by herself. He puts out a bunch of boiled potatoes with goat cheese on them, and she starts eating the whole stack.
He got 1 or 2.
I've kind of gotten sick of it, honestly.
Yeah, but that's not so much this show's fault as it is a fault of, well, anime in general.
It's the medium's fault.
Yeah. Even Dragon Ball retroactively did this.
No, Dragon Ball always had that as Goku's character trait.
No, I mean retroactively made it a non-human aspect.
Oh, right. Well, there was always something strange about Goku.
Well, yes, he was a little boy with a tail that turned into an ape and murdered people.
Yeah.
Wait. Before the segue, which I will signify again, I do want to comment on one thing. Bobcat had an issue with there being potatoes here. I want to specify this. In the anime, with the wolf spirit following the merchant as she teleports through wheat, he had issues with the potatoes.
See, I had been under the impression, and this was about partway through episode 2, that this was set in the real world, and that it was set in Europe.
With wolf spirits.
Okay, it's like this. Take the movie, you ever seen the movie Troy?
No.
Okay, the movie Troy is based on the Iliad by Homer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the original Iliad, there were Greek gods and goddesses all over the place. They were constantly taking forms, constantly interfering on the battlefield between the Greeks and the Trojans. You accepted that because that was just sort of the story it was.
Mm-hmm.
In the movie version, they took out the gods. You would think, okay, they're committed to realism. However, in one scene, they have a group of farm animals being led somewhere, and among those farm animals is a llama. Llamas are from South America, not Turkey.
La 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 llama.
So, and my point with that is that it's a similar thing here.
I don't actually see that, if only because they took the gods out of Troy, but they kept the wolf spirit. That's the main reason why I have a laugh at your disbelief.
Burke is once again, as is his wont.
Things.
Yes, I was just having some fun with it. Ha ha, there were no potatoes in Europe.
I'm a jerk.
And then Burke used this to point out to me that I'd been mistaken about the setting of the world.
Yes, and I did it a lot more politely there. Not here.
That's because you people have given him an audience.
How you doing? And speaking of audiences, romance!
Yes.
Chloe.
Romance. I like Chloe.
She was an interesting character, what little we got to see of her.
She was my favorite.
Though she had a case of self-induced jailbait weight.
She looked older than Holo to me.
Working out their ages. Say, Larry was about 15, 16, 17 when he met her as a kid.
Okay.
That means that he probably still sees her as a kid, which would likely explain why he's not exactly eager to jump into the sack with her.
Or even to acknowledge that she's making
Passes.
friendly romance. Yeah, I was gonna put it more complicatedly than that, but and complicatedly isn't a word. Yay. But
Yay for the English.
yeah, she was making passes at him.
Very, very obvious ones, and he was just sort of politely ignoring them to her frustration.
Yes. She's also a merchant. She also seems to be clever.
She is very smitten with him.
Yes. And she also obviously is sort of a rebel in as much as, you have her village's most important annual tradition where the person who catches the wolf in the wheat has to spend a week in the shrine, and she just laughs it off.
And escapes at the first chance. To be with Larry, specifically. She's a nice character. She's bubbly, happy, a little obsessed with Larry, and I'm not exactly sure why. As I've mentioned, Larry is not exactly a dynamo character, but, he's stable, I guess. He's a good idea for a catch, especially if you're a woman living in those times. Sadly for her, Holo exists.
Yeah, if Holo didn't exist, she would totally be the female lead.
Yes.
But then the story would also have much less going for it.
Yeah, Holo kind of redeems a lot of the... Well, not redeems. Holo helps balance out the slower factor of the story. She is a personality of her own.
Now, so far in the first 3 episodes, we've only really encountered one other character. What was that, Fermi?
I do not recall what his name was.
Was he selling fish?
I know he was sexist.
We're going to call him...
Sexist.
Sexist is different. He was, amorous.
Okay, then womanizer.
Ooh, ooh, ooh,
Why? Actually, that is what the dub called him, a womanizer. In fact, that's what Larry specifically called him.
He's another associate of Larry's, and he starts hitting on Holo immediately.
Immediately. As soon as he realizes, hey, this thing has a vagina. I don't even...
And that vagina is not currently owned by Larry.
That he didn't even wait to find that out. He was already hitting on her.
No, I think he did. He did. At first, he was flirting in a humorous way, or not a humorous way, but a sort of socially acceptable way. And then he found out she wasn't actually his wife, and then he went full on.
Yeah, full on is a term you could use. Still, yeah, he's... Actually, I don't know that much about him. I don't know if he's going to be a good character or a bad one.
In another show, I wouldn't have even bothered mentioning him.
But he is worth... He feels like he's going to show up later.
To do a callback to another show where we kind of struggled to talk about the characters a lot at the time. Heat Guy J, the three floozies, after their first appearance, I felt like I had a better peg on them. But that's because they were more shallow characters.
Yeah. One character we should mention before we head off to other pastures, and wow, this is actually going longer than I thought. We'll have to see how much gets cut out. The other character is actually a plot point. He is trying to sell Larry on a silver coin scam.
Oh, that guy. He was such a... He didn't even sink in for me. It's like, I knew there was a plot about this depreciation of a currency. And
Want me to try to explain it?
Honestly, this is one of those things where I'm going to say, it doesn't matter.
It matters. Because obviously I took away a little bit more than you did from this. Note the wolf wheat thing. It matters for one reason. This guy set up Larry on what seems to be a scam. He took his money and ran off. The thing of it is, and it's revealed in the third episode, I'm not too sure if Bobcat realized, or Bobcat got this or not. I don't know what the difference are in the sub and the dub. It's more than likely a larger part of a conspiracy against Larry. This is what I mentioned earlier. Someone is trying to bring Larry down, and he doesn't know who or why.
See, from the sub, I didn't get the impression that it was specifically against Larry. I got the impression that someone was trying to make him aware of a larger conspiracy.
No. This was against him, because it was targeting his money.
Ah, okay.
Those are our characters. Well, if I had to apply a character to Silver Coin Guy, he's a red herring, appears helpful, but is largely just all talk, and is kind of a minion.
Yep. So, he's a character in the same sense as that first Goomba in Super Mario Brothers is a character.
Oh, he's more than that. He's at least one of the floozies.
So, shall we move on to point 4, presentation?
What, you don't want to dwell on him being a floozy, selling his body at night?
I don't even think the floozies in Heat Guy J were selling their bodies at night. They were higher class than that.
Right, they were, at the very least, consorts. Speaking of consorts, presentation!
That is the worst segue ever, Burke.
Shut your mouth!
So, animation. This show looks nice.
It does.
Obviously, some research was put into it.
A little bit.
It wasn't the research to make it into a particular period and place, but it wasn't supposed to be, as I discovered in episode 2, when they had potatoes. See, that's what happens when you're a history/anthropology major.
You keep saying this like you're actually going to be a teacher or something. We know that's not true.
Like, it's like, and this is going to be a reference for the older people in the audience, it's like the old Darkwing Duck episode, where...
Oh, God, Darkwing Duck is for older audiences now.
So Darkwing Duck is looking for the villains, and a team of villains have taken over the city. He's trying to figure out, where could they possibly be hiding? In the background, they're raising up a huge flag with the villain's face on it. And then he glances over on the ground, and he sees a stale breadcrumb, and he realizes that this particular breadcrumb could only have come from the hotel where the villains were staying.
Clearly.
And the villains had intentionally put out the breadcrumb because, quote, "We knew you'd miss the flag."
Yeah.
And that's how I feel right now, having only noticed that it wasn't a particular European country because they had potatoes, which are from South America.
Yeah. Bobcat is a special flower, isn't he, folks? Okay, moving on from that preciousness.
Enough talk of potatoes.
No, I'm still going to reference potatoes.
So the anime is very good looking.
If I had to say anything, the animation is good, but it feels a little stiff. The characters don't really move a whole lot beyond their mouths.
And boy, do their mouths move.
You can take that as dirtily as you would like, Bobcat's mother. Okay, delete that, if you would. Still, the animation feels a little stilted at times, but nothing major. It looks nice. If anything, some of the characters, especially in the first episode, this isn't a common problem, but it feels like it could be. It's the problem from Tales from Earthsea, in that some of the characters can look kind of generic and blend in with other characters, such as Larry. Early on, before we really got used to him, I honestly mistook him for another character entirely. It was only later that, we got used to him. But it's a little off in some places. It's obviously not as high budgeted as it probably should have been.
Well, to be fair, this show doesn't really need a high budget. When I say that, well, I suspect that it's because they're working off of character designs from someone else, and character designs aren't really a sign of a high budget. I mean, there have been plenty of low-budget anime that have had distinct-looking characters that just never moved.
True.
I would say that this show has exactly the budget it needs, because it is a very talky show. I'll go briefly into directing here. The directing is nice because they managed to use scene transitions well to simultaneously show them traveling, but the conversation continuing, in a way that implies that time passes.
Yes.
It makes things more exciting than it would be if they were just standing around having the conversation in one spot.
Yes. It is very well put together, very well done. Which I guess brings us to the voice actors.
Actually, one last thing about the art. There is a lot of nudity in this show, and I expect Burke to start fighting me. I am of the opinion that somebody is nude when
even then,
they are not wearing any clothes. Burke is of the opinion that you need to see naughty bits for it to count as nudity.
Even then, even if that was the case, a lot of nudity would imply that a lot of people are naked. Only Holo is naked, and only for the first 5 minutes of her appearance. Total.
And in the second episode.
Total.
I'm just saying, it was kind of surprising, because this is not a fan servicey series at all.
No, and it's not done like fan service. But the thing about Holo is that it's entirely censored. She's about as naked as a Barbie doll. She has no nipples, so... Okay, warning label. If you get offended by Barbie dolls, don't watch this show.
I'd say it's a bit more risque than that, just,
I would if I saw anything jiggle. Nothing jiggled.
Okay, so voice acting. Can I start?
Sure.
This might be one of the worst dubs I've heard in ages. Now, this is not to say that the actors are bad. It's just that this reminded me of a 90s anime dub, where you have bizarre-sounding sentences just to meet the lip flaps. I wrote one down.
I have a very different opinion, but that's because I view it very differently.
Remember how much longer than you I've had this life. I think that the issue with it is that it's not that they're bad writers necessarily. They're trying to sound sort of faux Old English or faux Middle English style. And fantasy speak is hard enough to write and have it sound natural and good, but when you're trying to do faux fantasy speak and match it to anime lip flaps, it becomes hard.
The thing of it is, I don't think they were trying too hard to match it against the anime lip flaps, because there were plenty of times when it didn't. In fact, I enjoyed the way they talked, especially Holo. It really fit her character as an older-than-thou character.
I just got so annoyed with the dub. It got better when I switched to the sub.
I imagine that they didn't have the same talking style. But
it was actually fairly similar, it just works better in writing.
If you say so. I enjoyed the dub a lot here. It felt a little stilted from the secondary characters, but the primary characters, especially Holo. Holo has a terrific voice actress who really does her lines well. I enjoyed hearing her talk, and I enjoyed the way she talked. This isn't me trying to put Bobcat down, even though that's where he belongs. This is just a difference of opinion. If you like this, if you don't like this, it doesn't really matter in the end. Though it will affect how you view the show as a whole, which I'm sure we're going to get to in...
Let's see, was there anything else I wanted to mention? Music was nice. I'd say that the opening theme set the mood of the show. It's very slow.
Yes, but it's a nice theme. It's not J-pop.
Nope. And the end theme is sung in English by Japanese people, so that's interesting in and of itself.
I did not listen to it once. So yes, as I said, the dub is a matter of opinion, which really comes down to how you enjoyed it in...
Part 5. Final thoughts. Burke, you can go first.
You go first.
No, after you.
After you, madam.
You know, Burke, I try to do a simple, polite gopher's gag, and you have to turn it into something insulting.
Yes!
For shame. For shame. Okay, so...
For shame for you, maybe.
I would say that this is not the worst show we've watched. In fact, I kind of went into it having heard good things about it. I know that a lot of reviewers really enjoyed it, and reviewers that I respect. I know that at least one member of the Des or Des Brigade has tackled this one. But at the end of the day, I won't be watching any more of this. Because the first episode was kind of slow, but it got slower from there. The first episode I was able to watch all in one go. The other 2 episodes, I had to keep starting and stopping over the course of an hour or so. Or more than an hour.
Which was an hour ago, for the record. This is the rare, shining occasion where I actually got it done way before Bobcat. I am so proud of myself.
I was just so bored with this thing, and I feel bad about it. It's like finding out that you don't like Citizen Kane.
Which
you feel stupid afterwards, because I can deal with this type of slowness in other works of fiction, but here it just ground down on me. I just can't recommend this show. Since it's free to try on Hulu, I would say give it a shot. Other people liked it. I could just be the odd man out. I mean, even well-received movies like The Dark Knight. Well, I didn't like The Dark Knight either, but they have a 99% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. That means that one person didn't like it. So I could just be that one lone nut.
You are. And this is why I wanted you to go first, because I wanted to end this review on a positive note. You screaming while on fire. But before then, my final thoughts. I have the exact opposite reaction than Bobcat. In fact, of all the shows we've watched so far, this is honestly the first show beyond, morbid curiosity with Bobcat and Test that I do want to see more of. I want to see more of Holo. I want to see more of Lawrence. I want to see more of the world. I want to see where the plot is going. I want to see if they can be any more boring with the talk of money. Because don't get me wrong. It is pretty boring, but after a while it just sort of works. It's kind of a rhythm with the show. Either you get it or you don't. It's kind of like Doctor Who in a way. Hey, Bobcat?
Oh, stop baiting me.
No. Still, back on track from baiting Bobcat. My honest thoughts is that if you want a character piece, if you don't mind something that goes slow, and I love things that go slow. Sanjuro is one of my favorite Japanese movies, and its plot is a snail. This is really good. It's propped up by its characters well. The dub work is really, really good if you like it. I would give this a definite recommendation. My strongest recommendation of anything on the show. Even more so than Squid Girl, which is heresy.
I would definitely say this is our most split decision since Nanaka 617. As those of you who listened to it may recall, Burke was raging against it mostly on account of the voice of the main character. That was the deal breaker for him. He didn't necessarily have as much of a problem with the larger show.
Not exactly. It was a little bit boring to me without any of the redeeming factors of this show, namely the characters,
But as I recall, that was your main complaint, was that particular voice was the deal breaker for something you were already sort of shaky on.
Yeah. Especially coupled with my first opinions.
For me, it's sort of this Baka and Wolf. No, for me,
keep that in.
The crossover that needs to happen because you demanded it.
Yes, all one of you, you sick little puppy.
For me, this show is a collection of things that I just couldn't get into. Like I said, I got so bored with it, and I'm the history buff guy. This should have been right up my alley, but it wasn't. It just didn't strike my chords right. I'm starting to conclude that I'm not actually much of a fan of fantasy. as much as I loved the Lord of the Rings movies and such, because this is the kind of reaction I keep having from fantasy works that I review.
We'll have to find something a little bit better for you by next week. Something I pick out.
Yes, Burke finally gets a say. So, Burke, what did you choose for us to review?
You on fire!
Wait, Burke, we also have an announcement. Don't let me on fire just yet. Wait!
Too late. Stupid potato.
Oh, flame on.
For the record, the next week's a thing. We'll have a special guest star of some guy whose name I don't know.
Next week we'll be reviewing Casher and Sins with special guest star Yorocha from the Shades of Grey manga review blog.
Where did you get a fire extinguisher from?
Hammerspace.
That's it. Shotgun time.
Isn't that a bit predictable?
Stupid potato.